Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, the live-action Netflix series, Season 1, Episode 4, The Pirates Are Coming. In this episode, man, I have started to realize that one of the hardest plot lines to watch is a thing is happening and nobody believes it trope. I really felt for Usopp, man. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Gabby for commissioning this episode. And also thanks to Gabby, I will make this announcement now. You guys know that normally my recording times start at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. And on Halloween, I had not booked that day off because I wasn't really thinking things through completely. And I have asked Gabby if I could move up both One Piece episodes on that day, because there's one for the Netflix and one for the anime. And Gabby generously was very flexible. So I will be starting my recordings on Halloween afternoon at 1 o'clock instead of my usual 4 o'clock. That way I will be done recording at 5:30 and I will have the evening. Because I really want to start doing stuff on Halloween. So, yeah, appreciate you, Gabby, and just wanted to let everybody know ahead of time. I know that for a lot of you who are abroad, earlier time slots are actually easier for you, so hopefully you will enjoy that on that day. But anyway, let's get into this episode. So we start off going down into what I keep sort of calling a well. There isn't any water in it, so it's unclear for me what this actually is. But the main thing that I was like sort of surprised by is the fact that Mary, the sheep man, seems to indeed actually be dead. I wasn't really sure if they were going to do that or not. And personally, you guys know that I always sort of have had an issue with how easy it is for people to recover from what seemed to be life-threatening wounds, or indeed people who it looked like had died, not being dead after all. So I have no problem with this. But when Zoro wakes up and looks over, I was like kind of expecting for Mary to like cough and then be like, I'm still here, you know. And instead, he is, I guess, left at the bottom of that well when Zoro climbs out. I assume they go back and get him later. But this sequence of Zoro trying to get out of the well, I don't remember if this is how it goes in the anime, but I really enjoyed this like as a metaphor for him just becoming so determined to accomplish something specific that he never gives up, even though that shit is very, very hard. And this kind of tenacity is the sort of thing that I admire so much, because I have it with some things, very specific things, but I don't have it in a lot of others. And I really wish that I could find it in me to just keep pushing sometimes, because I really believe in there are times, of course, where it's, no, you should give up. This is not going to happen. You're wasting your time when you could be applying it to something that's more worthwhile. But then there are things that are just like, you know, better for the whole way you live your life if you go ahead and keep trying, even if you never really get where you would ideally like to end up. The action of trying makes your life better. And that's the thing that I would really like to be able to like exemplify a bit more. But yeah, so we have like the whole backstory of Zoro's decision to become the best swordsman in this episode. And it's pretty much identical to the storyline in the anime. But I'm going to be honest, y'all, I really prefer the anime version. And you guys know that was probably out of like all of the episodes of this show. It was one of the most emotionally affecting, and it was certainly for me the first episode that I watched that was really surprising to me how tonally different it was than what I had watched so far, because it falls very early on in the anime, and everything had been so unabashedly completely bonkers that I got very used to that tone. And so when we came to this episode, I was taken entirely by surprise at how serious it was. And I feel like there is something about the way it's animated and the like just contrast of it with the rest of the show that feels extremely intense at the time. And it just kind of lacked that for me in this. So I don't know, it's sort of like a difficult thing to say because they are such different mediums. I think part of me didn't love the acting of the younger Zoro, and I also like the abruptness with which they have him finding out that she's dead, and the sense of it being this like friendship that they developed. I just didn't quite feel it. And it's not like they spent less time on any of it than they did in the anime, as far as I can recall. But yeah, for whatever reason, I just really was affected by the anime in a way that the show didn't. And maybe it's just because I knew it was coming. But the anime, there are some really like long pauses and beautiful moments of the camera pulling back while he's there. I remember one particular shot where young Zoro is standing in a field and he is opposite Kuina and the wind is blowing and it's like nighttime. So as the wind is blowing over the grass, there's this ripple effect and the moonlight shining off the top of it. And it's like just this incredibly beautiful shot in a show whose animation can be very, very iffy sometimes. And when I think of that episode, that moment in the moonlight is the moment that I think of. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that storyline because pretty much it's identical to the anime, and because it didn't work for me as well, I'm going to mostly focus on the things that I really, really liked. So we start off with Zoro, but then we cut over to Usopp talking to Kobi. And he is explaining the situation with this pirate that he is claiming is pretending to be a butler. Of course, we have Helmeppo here, who is like, I can't believe that you are buying any of this, to Kobi. And Kobi is obviously sensing, he has like a gut feeling that, one, Usopp is not lying. And two, when he meets Clahador, he is like, yeah, this guy's no good. Like, clearly something is up. But there's no actual evidence. And in fact, the evidence is against Usopp based on his past behavior. So what you get here is this incredibly difficult storyline of Kobi's gut telling him to believe Usopp, Usopp telling the truth for like the first time in his life, and neither of those things mattering because Helmeppo is insistent that his father already killed Kuro, and there's a certain sense of pride there that's getting in the way for sure. Like, he's never going to believe that his father was wrong about killing somebody. And also Helmeppo doesn't want Kobi to succeed. So he's very like, yeah, we're not only not going to find pirates, but there's no way Straw Hat is anywhere around here, which it results in an interesting sort of conflict with Helmeppo when later even though they don't believe that Klahadore is a pirate, when it turns out that Luffy is here, he seems to be kind of disappointed. Like, I think he just wanted this to be an outright failure. And the fact that it seems like maybe we're getting what we came for, he should be happy about, but it's not about what he should feel. It's about just wanting this poor kid to fail. So I said this in the intro about how tough it is to watch somebody not be believed. And I have realized, as far back as I can remember, this has been something that has really been difficult for me to watch in storylines, is when a person has gone through an experience and nobody is willing to hear them out even, or willing to like take a leap. And it's, you know, because of my reaction to it, you would think maybe I had personal experience with saying something had happened and not being believed. I don't really. Like, there's nothing that I'm very lucky in a lot of ways. I never suffered any kind of abuse that I needed to report. That's the sort of thing that's extremely common, is people who have been abused not being believed by authority figures, by their parents, or even if they were believed, somebody just being like, well, but you probably brought it on yourself somehow. And of course, never forget the, you know, whole issue with that, with domestic abuse, and how many women have suffered at the hands of partners who are otherwise extremely charming and know exactly how to handle the outside world so that they continue getting away with what they do behind closed doors. And people really think that because they knew this person on a social level, that they know them enough to say, he would never do XYZ. He's not like that. When the whole thing about abusers is that they are different people when they are with the person they are abusing. So I think that's like part of where my issue came from. Even as a young kid, I was pretty aware of the concept of being abused and not believed, because I had heard from a young age, my parents both suffered abuse as children, and they both were very vigilant with me in terms of explaining to me what that could look like, and to tell them right away. Both of them were really insistent on me understanding the concept of the various kinds of abuse that could happen, so that I would know enough to be able to tell them if it were happening to me, which I really appreciate. I was prepared if it happened, but it never did, thank God. And because I was warned, I had an extra sort of sensitivity to anything that surrounded that sort of concept, even in a vague way, like just not being believed about something that isn't related to abuse at all. This is part of also why I never ever could get into the Labyrinth. The Labyrinth came out, or not the Labyrinth. And it's this very young girl and this older man being super creepy with her. And even as a young child, I was like, okay, this guy is abusive. Like, this is a molester. And then it became this classic that people love. And to this day, I'm just like, I guess I have never been able to see it for that movie. So anyway, all this to say, I rewatched the beginning of this episode, like the first 15 minutes and the last 10 minutes. But I skipped on my rewatch the whole middle, because seeing poor Usopp be gaslit is so difficult. I hated this. It's not only the fact that Helmeppo is constantly calling into question, not only the fact that Klahadore is so good at like destroying his credibility, but later when he finally goes and talks to, oh my God, what is her name? Kayla? I can't remember her name. But, you know, the young girl. When he talks to her, she doesn't believe him either. That part was the worst for me. It was the fact that she says something like, I believed your other stories because they made me feel better, but this is not okay. like what I always want a person in these sort of situations to ask is, what would I gain from lying to you about this? And it's a difficult thing because Usopp will lie without there being anything necessarily to gain. It's Kaya. Thank you, Florian. Kaya is, she's uplifted by his stories when he gets really extreme and ridiculous with how he's telling them. So he gets something out of that. He impresses her in a way that lifts her spirits and makes her feel better. And that's what he wants to do. With the pirates are coming, I don't really know what he gets out of that. I think it's just sort of living out a fantasy of his father coming home. But even that, it's just a sort of strange bit that he does. So I don't even think that the question, what would I get out of this, would work that well in this situation. But that is often when I'm watching this sort of thing, what's on my mind is just like, you think he's lying, but for what reason? What do you think he's lying for? And sometimes within the plot, there is something built in that seems like it would be a motivation, and so it can work even though it's difficult to watch. You sort of understand why characters don't believe. Here, I really want to know, Helmeppo keeps saying you're not buying this, right, to Kobi about what Usopp is telling them. And I just wanted to be like, Helmeppo, what do you think Usopp's getting out of telling the Marines that there's this person who is a pirate? Like, why do you think he would lie? It's not like Helmeppo knows Usopp's reputation as a liar. And not only that, they come into the town and find Usopp already yelling for help from people. So it's not like he saw the Marines and was like, oh, perfect opportunity, rubbing his hands together to report a thing that he just fabricated. They come upon him already desperate and sitting and asking, why doesn't anybody believe me? So I just kept wanting to be like, will you just inquire from Helmeppo why he thinks you are lying? Oh, I'm sorry. I just saw that Florian earlier. He said, the blue-haired character in this episode reminded me of somebody else for weeks. I was thinking of the orange-haired servant girl from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and now I can rest. I am going to tell you guys something. I have never seen Rocky Horror Picture Show. I know. Rashawn is obsessed with it. She loves it. She does those theater going experiences where people dress up and they sing along to it and everything. She loves it. I have seen the first 10 minutes and that is all. The soundtrack was played frequently at cast parties when I was in school. So I know the music, but other than that, never seen it. So forgive me, but I do not know the reference. Seraphim says it started as a coping mechanism for his dad running away and his mom being sick, fantasizing about dad coming home and somehow making his mom better. And he just never stopped. Okay. So, but that's the part that I find kind of puzzling, is just never having stopped, because there was a very specific thing he was hoping to do. And now any possibility of that is gone. Not to say that we ever just stop our coping mechanisms. There are times where they stay with us our whole lives, but usually we can sort of delude ourselves into continuing to believe in something from them. And I don't know what he's telling himself about lying to everybody regarding pirates. What is the story that he's telling himself there about that? I don't know. But it doesn't really matter. It's just I'm just trying to explain to you guys my feelings of difficulty surrounding this sort of thing. And I don't want to start a whole thing here, because I have no doubt that there are going to be people listening to this who want to come at me about it, and I am not interested. So just save your breath. But the whole thing that happened with the trial between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard is such a great example. Johnny Depp is an abuser, and Amber Heard has done some really gross things, but she, I believe, is fully reacting to having been in an abusive relationship. And there have been so many little bits from the trial that have gained this sort of life of their own, because they are salacious like, for example, this thing about her having shit on the bed. People will still talk about that as if it was real. When, if you read the documents, he admits that she hadn't actually been the one to shit on the bed. Like, he comes out and says that that wasn't what happened. But nobody, like, pays attention to that part. That's not the part that gets memed. And there are so many instances of that within that trial, of things that she was accused of that stuck for whatever reason as he testified them, and were disproved or shown to be wildly exaggerated. But that part, after the fact, never tempered what public opinion was or what people's understanding was. So the way that she is seen now is as somebody who invented whole cloth things that happened to her and was herself an abuser and just trying to cast aspersions on him. When in fact, if you actually look at the history of what happened between them, plus the documentation, it is unequivocally that he is an abusive piece of shit. And you cannot convince me otherwise. Don't care. I have read what I have read, and a lot of it is direct fucking screenshots of him. And you will never convince me otherwise. The whole point of that trial was for him to undermine her credibility. And it worked, because that is what men are great at, is making women look like the bad guy so they can keep doing their shit. This is like a classic tactic. And the fact that everybody fell for it is enraging. And the fact that it has established now a precedent that a woman can accuse a man of abuse and he can countersue for her making this accusation is so hideous and upsetting. Like, the implications of that. We have created a scenario where there's even more reason for women to stay quiet about abuse. It's fucking grotesque to me. And yet, 80% of the world is convinced that she's the monster and that he has been unfairly maligned. Poor Johnny. I really can't believe that people are still trying to cancel him when we all know. No, stop it. So that's the big one that, like, hovers in my mind these days, because it's just so... Everything about people believing him is so surface and so predictable and so, like, entrenched in misogyny that it makes me sick to my stomach. And yet, there are so many folks out there that otherwise have very progressive viewpoints on a lot of things and are really leftist, and they still fell for this shit. So anyway, all this to say, people not being believed, it's like a little triggering. And so this whole thing is just really, really tough, you guys. We have the discovery of Luffy as well in the kitchen. He has, like, all the soup around his mouth because it was that blue, like, chunky soup. I don't know what this is. It almost looks like it was like oatmeal or grits or something that had food coloring in it, but it looks so gross. And it's supposed to be that it's around his mouth because he basically, like, tilted the whole pot of soup up and it got on his face because he was eating sloppily. But what it looks like to me is that he threw up and it's, like, on his face. So anyway, his body is discovered first by Nami, who is like, oh my God, what the hell happened? And she's trying to wake him up when she hears people coming and realizes, okay, something shady is happening, because if he ate that soup and now he's out, these people were up to no good. So she immediately hides when she hears them coming. And they find the body and assume, if he's not dead already, that he will be shortly. Of course, Kuro is infuriated. Like, the fact that this is... I don't know if he had still been planning on giving Kaya the soup, or if this was something that he had sort of abandoned the concept of getting at her this particular way. But it's just the sloppiness of yet another person to deal with. And he instructs them to dump his body with the green-haired goon, or whatever it is that I don't remember. He calls him like an imbecile or something. And the when Nami is like overhearing all of this from the cupboard, and she hears him say like dump him with the other one, of course it sounds like, oh, we killed them both. And she is really like freaking out a little bit, which it makes so much sense, you guys, because this is a woman who is already so traumatized by pirates, which we don't know yet as viewers in this, but you know, we do. So it must be awful for her to be in this situation that seems mostly positive after her conversation with Kaya and sort of getting things out about, you know, her feelings regarding this rich girl. She's in this nice house. She's being given a place to sleep and something to eat, and things are looking pretty up. And then to find out that she has been like thrust in the middle of this whole thing, it's like, I have to imagine just triggering for her, you know? So I do love to, I want to mention, I can't remember the name of the chef, Bachi, I think. But he is so actually invested in like being a good chef that he is sort of sad that Luffy's dead, because he's like, I really would have liked to talk to him about how it tasted, because I was pursuing that perfect balance between savory and bitter. And the girl with the blue hair says like it probably tasted like poison, and he's like, not when I'm the chef, which I do really like. Like, yeah, the point of it is that it doesn't taste like poison, or else why would Kaya be eating it? But there's something about how like actually wanting to be good at his job he is that I do appreciate as somebody who also likes to cook. It's just a point of pride, you know? And she tries to say like, you're not a chef and I'm not a maid, we're pirates. But then later she says something about how he better not track mud in on her floors again. And he's like, oh really? Because you're the maid. And she's like, how dare you? And I'm like, I don't know, girl, that did sound like somebody who is a maid. So this is when we have Kobi at the door. And he is with, you know, Helmeppo and Usopp. And there's also a pair of guards or soldiers or something behind him that are armed. And this is so terrible, because what Klahadore does is he like not only throws the fact that Usopp is a known liar in his face, but then says something like, he's never been the same since his mother passed, but some fruits are so bruised they can't help but be rotten to the core. And there's nothing you can do about madness. So he just throws everything at Usopp. 1, known liar. 2, traumatized by mom's death. 3, probably just like a bad seed. 4, likely insane. Like, there's so many things that he's just tossing into the pot there to discredit him. And of course Helmeppo's eating this up. Kobi, on the other hand, is like, none of this sounds right to me. Like, I don't like it. But there's no evidence otherwise. So all he can do is just be like, well, can I ask you a couple more questions? And of course Usopp's like, look at his gloves. He had blades in his gloves, but he's wearing his regular white butler's gloves, so that's not happening. I just also, side note about like butler's gloves, you guys, I the principle behind butler's gloves, right, is if you are wearing something that shows up the dirt on items, you are going to be much more conscious of the state of the household altogether, because the state of your gloves is going to reflect the housekeeping going on in the home. And I really think that's actually a brilliant idea in a lot of ways. Have you guys ever tried wearing white gloves while doing like anything? Because I've done it 1 or 2 times, not for cleanliness reasons, but because I was wearing long, like elbow length white gloves for a dress up of some kind. Oh my God. They get so disgusting so fucking fast. And I always think about how immaculate homes must have been where people were walking around with these types of gloves and they just stayed white. Like, I can't even wrap my head around that level of attention to cleanliness at every stage of the home. I mean, you know, at any given moment, there are several chores I could be doing because my house needs it. I could be sweeping and vacuuming today. I could be dusting everything in this room, very likely, or getting the dust off of the ceiling fans or whatever, and baseboards, and probably could go over my like kitchen sink and my bathroom sink. Everything at all times could use a cleaning. I'll clean it and it could use a cleaning just a week later. What it must have been like to live in a household that had multiple servants taking care of all of that for you. Unreal. Like, what a fantasy. So this ends with Klahadore basically closing the doors in Kobi's face in a really abrupt way that signals as much as anything that Kobi is onto something. And this dude is ignoring him and trying to get away with something. We cut from there to the conversation between Usopp and Kaya. Because when he realizes the Marines aren't going to do jack shit, he's instantly like, well, the least I can do is get Kaya out of here. And he tries to tell her that Mary is dead, that Klahadore isn't a butler, that he is trying to hurt you, he's a pirate. And this is when she kind of like, the way that I interpret this is that what he is saying is so frightening that she decides to go along with, I don't believe you and I'm angry at you, instead of letting herself be afraid. Because it's like just so much easier. It's so much easier to be angry than afraid. And he like says, you've got to listen. And he grabs her wrist and she slaps him in the face and says, I don't think you know what the truth is anymore. And I was sort of like, I get that he shouldn't have grabbed her like that. He was probably too forceful. But also, he's really afraid. And have you ever seen him treat you like this before? You know, like, really, that's what it comes down to for me, is he has lied before, but has he ever gotten physical in any way that you have felt the need to be afraid? Like, that in and of itself, to me, just says danger is real here, you know? So, like I said, it's very hard to watch. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, the clock is striking midnight. Klahadore is saying Kaya is of age and we can finally put this farce to bed. And I can't help but laugh because, like, I think I said this in the anime as well. And I really want to preface this by saying I don't actually have a problem with this, but I can't not say something about it. The fact that he is planning to kill her like 5 minutes after she turns 18 is hysterical. Like, like, ultimately, on this little island, what is anybody going to do about it? Really, you know, like, this is not something that I'm like, it would never hold up in a court of law. No, it probably wouldn't. And there doesn't seem to be a court of law in Syrup Village. It seems like that's not a thing that he is going to have to worry about. But I just keep laughing at the idea that he is even pretending, you know, that he's even attempting this farce, that they are doing this like legally and in a valid way, when, sir, nobody is going to be fooled by this. It's quite apparent that this is something that you have been planning for a minute here. And I just really enjoy it. It's like literally the clock strikes midnight and he's like, ha, finally. And I'm just going, wow, okay, sure. Just go for it, I guess. So the results of this, like, no more hiding who we are, this kills me. They first turn off all of the lights in the house and drop, like, all of the shutters so that the place is locked down. This is meant to be a protective measure to keep people from getting in the house, but it results in everybody being locked in, and there is no way to get out when it's like this. This is the first moment where it starts to be like Kaya is maybe believing Usopp, and the door rattles, and I love Nami comes in. It's a really great moment because you think for a second, oh, they are already here, which makes more sense actually than what ends up happening, because initially Klahadore is not even aware Kaya is still awake. So what he decides to do, it really, if you step back and look at it, doesn't make a lot of sense. He's like wandering the house with his blade gloves going, Kaya, and already behaving like we're playing a game of cat and mouse here. But there's no reason for him to actually think they're playing a game of cat and mouse. Like, what he should think, I assume, is happening is that she is asleep still upstairs. The only reason that I can imagine that he thinks she's aware is because Nami knocked that one girl out. So maybe Nami rushed to tell Kaya, but sorry, Florian says, don't think they turned out the lights. The lights dimming was just a result of the power it took to activate the shutters. You're right, because I'm looking at the scene now, and the lights are very, very dim, so I think that's why I saw it that way. But it's everything, the lighting has gotten quite dramatic at this point. But you're right, the lights are technically still on. I think they've just really gone very dim. And you all, I have already said what an amazing fucking casting choice Kuro is. You guys, I just can't. His moment where he walks through those doors, because we first have his like two henchmen and they're getting into their outfits, which are ridiculous. They are so silly. I love it. I'm so glad that they decided to keep a lot of the costumes for the henchmen, at least, very, very true to the original show. I wish that the villains were getting kept the same as well. Klahadore's is pretty similar. But the main one that I'm going to keep going back to is Alvida. I wish that they had made her costume as fucking bonkers as it really was. These two sidekicks, though, like the fucking half mask with the cat ears and the cloak for the fat guy, and then the blue-haired girl with these shorts and the sleeveless vest with the bow tie. Like, what even are we doing? So the two of them, it's extra intimidating because they are so goofy seeming that when Klahadore comes through that door in the center panel and he has his blades on and is like flaring them like he is starting a dance, genuinely super intimidating. Like, I just love all of the imagery of this. He sort of like stands before the camera and then he turns, and as he walks away, he brings the hand down in front of the camera so that the blades like just sort of flutter over. It's just gorgeous. Like, it looks so good. And I just think this guy is genuinely scary. I mean, this whole scene with him walking through the house, this is done to death. There are so many properties out there with a bad man who is trying to find the protagonist who is hiding in a room, and he is shooting through walls, stabbing through walls, overturning things, whatever. And it all depends on whether you really believe the bad guy wants to kill the person, and whether you really believe that the danger of them being found is like controllable and imminent. And all of that works in this scene. You really believe that if they make one false move, he will hear them. And what I mean by this is, and I think you guys are all going to get what I mean. Have you seen a scene like this where a person's like actually kind of making noise, but the bad guy just doesn't seem to hear them? Do you get what I'm saying? There are so many like that, where allegedly they have to be so quiet. But really, when they're running and hiding and moving between place to place and whatever, it's like kind of loud. And so there's a sense of almost, well, he can't be looking that hard. You know what I mean? My favorite example of a really good version of this is actually not with people. It's the scene in the kitchen in Jurassic Park where the kids are hiding from the velociraptors. And any noise, like, because they have a whole different like sensory input than human beings do. The terror of that is really particular. Like, it feels so heightened. And because of how scary Klahadore seems, I assign him enhanced senses, even though I do not think that's actually true of him. I feel as if he has better hearing, a better sense of smell than a regular person. So every moment that they are hiding, I am truly afraid for them. And when he is stabbing through things, he comes so close to actually getting Kaya a couple times. And when the blades cut through and she jumps and claps a hand over her mouth, her acting is flawless. She genuinely looks like she barely caught herself from screaming. Like, it was a second later with her hand and it would have just come out. And the whole scene, I just was on the edge of my seat, even though I know all of these people are going to be fine. I know all of this, like how this winds up, didn't matter. I was so afraid for them. And this, you know, I'm getting ahead of myself here because like this chase scene doesn't quite happen until Nami comes in and starts to be like, Kaya, think back to when you started getting sick. Did that begin when Klahadore came into your life? And I really love the moment where Usopp is like taking a moment and looking at the, you know, the blue stuff in her room and thinking like, oh my God, I gave you that tea. Like, you know, knowing that you were inadvertently complicit, it doesn't matter. It was inadvertent. That is a horrible thing to find out, that this person you cared about, who really like, who was suffering so badly, and what you came for was to make them feel better, and then to find out that they were being put through this in part because you were like giving them the poison. That is a horrible thing to live with, even if it wasn't intentional. So yeah, this whole bit here, it's just really, I just felt for Usopp so bad. This poor guy. So then we have the, you know, Zoro finally managing to make it up out of the well. It has taken a minute. And of course, because we have him here and we are going to be, you know, we've got a couple of like sidekicks to deal with, there has to be a fight scene between all of them. So as Klahadore is attempting to find Kaya, he has, by the way, handed Luffy over to Kobi and Helmeppo in order to sort of get them out of his hair. He's just like, yeah, take this guy. This is perfect. I don't want him around. You guys would like to arrest him. Ideal. Good on you. Take him. Which I really enjoy the moment of that as well, because you can see Usopp realizing he didn't ask enough questions when they were like, we're looking for a Straw Hat Pirate. And he's like, oh, Luffy? Yeah, I can show you Luffy. So not only are these guys not believing his story about what's going on with Klahadore, he has led the cops to Luffy explicitly and just like handed him over on a silver platter and betrayed him when he had just finished describing Luffy as his other second best friend. Wow. Usopp is having a really, really bad night. So they have Luffy, who finally like recovers from this poison. And it's never really explained. I think we all make the assumption that he is okay because of his devil fruit powers, that he just has like a stronger constitution than a regular person. So he's starting to, like, Luffy's starting to wake up, and Helmeppo turns around and is like, do you have something to say? And Luffy just vomits that blue soup all over him. Truly a horrible moment. I mean, I'm not mad at, like, Helmeppo getting thrown up on. Great. Love it. Yeah. But anytime that somebody gets puked on, it's so, like, it squicks me out the same way that, like, seeing lots of bugs crawling around squicks me out. So Luffy is talking to Kobi, and he says, oh my God, Kobi, I've got to go back. The butler, he's going to kill Kaya. And of course you see Kobi just being like, God damn it. One, I really didn't want that to be true, but you're saying it too. So it has to be. And two, I am under direct orders to bring you in. And Luffy's like, you said you wanted to help innocent people. And Kaya is innocent. And all of a sudden, Helmeppo pulls a gun and is like, screw this. Father always said a dead pirate weighs the same as a live one. And what I find funny here, I don't think Kobi remembers. Like, Luffy doesn't get hurt if somebody shoots him. You know, like, I kind of wanted Kobi to be like, okay, go ahead and shoot him. Of course, that would be very out of character for him, for somebody who cares about his friend here and doesn't actually want him hurt, even though he's obeying orders, which would end in Luffy being killed. So I kind of did want to be like, just go ahead then, whatever. But he gets between them and it's just like, Helmeppo, what are you doing? And he just says, pirate, get going. We're going to start walking towards the ship or you're going to die. And then you hear this noise and Helmeppo turns and there is Zoro standing there with the two guards that had been with them on the ground. And the look on Helmeppo's face, the fact that this is the guy he's facing with, like, there is nobody that I think would intimidate him more effectively. And Zoro says, hey, haircut, is what he says to him, which I found hilarious. He walks up to them and he's very quiet and very understated the way he is with everything. And as he walks up, you think there's going to be a thing. He doesn't even look at Helmeppo. He just punches him without even giving him, like, that is so disrespectful. And Helmeppo goes down hard. So Luffy begins walking away and Kobi yells, hold it right there. By orders of the Marines, I'm placing you under arrest. And I really enjoy Zoro's reaction to this. He just pauses and puts his hands on the hilts of his sword. Like, all right, we got to deal with this. Like, there's no animosity coming off him. It's just a pause of like, well, you got to deal with red tape sometimes, you know, like a very sort of resigned energy. Luffy turns around and comes back, and I love this actor, guys. God, he's good. Oh my God. I didn't even think of that. I'm sorry, guys. Florian's in the chat saying, Zoro having gone the complete opposite direction as the place he was trying to go, despite being able to literally see the mansion from the well because Zoro. Florian, I didn't even question why Zoro was on this path here. I straight up just was like, oh, he came to rescue Luffy. Why would he know to rescue Luffy? He wouldn't know that. He was in the fucking well when Luffy got. So, of course, that's not on purpose. I didn't even think about that. That's amazing. But anyway, what I was saying was the actor who plays Luffy, I love him so much because he is so good at going from sunshine, pure sweetness and light to, he's a little scary, isn't he? He just on a dime. And this is a perfect blend here because he's trying to be kind to Kobi while also brooking no fucking arguments. And so there's a kind of grim smile to this. I know you've got a job to do, but I'm going to go back and help my friends. And he's stepping towards him as he says this. So don't try to stop me. And Kobi just takes a step or two back and nods. And there's a real like, okay, bud. Like, it's not even, I know you have to do this. You're a good guy. That felt pure intimidation. Like, I don't want any of this smoke. And I can tell I don't. And then Luffy puts his hat on and tightens the little string around his neck. And he runs off and just leaves Kobi there standing with 3 unconscious bodies around him. And I was like, sucks to suck. So they are heading back as Kuro is wandering through the house, stabbing one object after another, just terrorizing Kaya and talking about how tedious it was to wait on her and all the bullshit that he asked her to do, or that she asked him to do. And just really like the concept of this is so hurtful. Somebody that you thought cared about you, that you thought was doing things to care for you because they actually had affection toward you and that they wanted you to be okay. And to find out not only were they behind making you sick, but also had utter contempt for you every second of every day. That is so upsetting. Oh, I'm sorry. All those comments were Seraphim, not Florian. Sorry about that, Seraphim. That is your credit I'm giving now. Apologies for not giving you proper credit and crediting Florian, but appreciate you, Florian, letting me know. But yeah, so this whole thing is so like, there's something so humiliating about that, you know, finding out that this person was like mocking you in their head while you thought they were doing their best to be kind to you. And I was sort of expecting for him to say that he was responsible for killing her parents. I don't remember if that's, I feel like that was what happened in the anime. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe he does say this and I just missed it, but I had been sort of waiting for it. So I feel like I would have noticed if that didn't happen, or if that did happen. So anyway, Luffy comes in at this point and we have a couple moments of him like stepping forward and feeling a cut. And it's like the person who slashed him was totally invisible, which we know is due to his devil fruit power. Now, another thing, they don't ever specifically state what his devil fruit was. I don't believe so, anyway. Which I do think is kind of surprising, because it's sort of like important to things a lot of the time, what a person is specifically capable of and what they aren't. And with Buggy, at least, they specifically mention the chop fruit and what it is that he can do. I don't think they say Kuro's fruit, and it's just sort of like, oh yeah, he could just be very, very fast, and that's all it is. Oh, what? I'm sorry. Florian says he does not have a devil fruit. He's just super fast, even in the anime. That's insane. I did not realize that. Okay, that's what I was almost about to call it the shave technique, actually, Seraphim. So that's amazing. Seraphim is saying he doesn't have a fruit. It's just a technique he can do. It's an early example of the shave technique CP9 can do. That's what I was thinking, but it's just weird that this is introduced so early, and then we don't really see another person able to do this stuff until so much later. Oh my God. I don't even know how I missed that. Let's see. Seraphim says, and then he rants about how she's done nothing with her life. Well, duh, you've been keeping her too sick to do anything, asshole. That bothered me too, Seraphim. Like, I would be so dead because he would say this shit and I wouldn't be able to resist arguing with him and just giving away my hiding place and just be like, you dickhead, that's not how it... And then I'd be like, shit, why did I say that? It's like when people had that meme that's going around of like, you know, Michael Myers is standing in your living room with a knife and you're hiding behind the curtain or something and you're keeping totally quiet, but then he yells like, shake it, and somebody just can't help but yell back, shake it like a Polaroid picture. Like, that is what I would be doing there. So anyway, the fight between Zoro and blue-haired girl and fat guy, like, kind of a weird fight. Didn't love it. It was, like, entertaining, but it was so distracting because they are so goofy in some ways. And I do appreciate that she gets his swords at one point. Not all of them, I don't think. I think he's got one left. But the silliness of the two of them just never made me really feel like worried for him. Even when they were winning, I couldn't get to the point that I was actually concerned. That's fine. Not every fight is going to be a winner. I don't mind that. So of course we then have Luffy in the end getting the better of him by grabbing his wrists. He had tried to like impale Luffy on these blades. Luffy pulls his hands apart to create an opening, and then he says gumma gum, and that's the way he says it this time, not gum gum, gumma gum, and then gum gum bell, and it's a headbutt, which I don't remember this move actually, but headbutts him straight out the window. And it's so funny to me because he goes flying out the window and everybody is just like, oh, okay, that guy's dealt with, we won. And I'm like, he just went out the window. Like, he's right outside, guys. I would not call this a straight up victory. You don't know if he's going to just turn around and come back in. But once they come running downstairs and they've got the shades or the shutters of the doors pulled up and the two henchmen are tied up on the ground, it's pretty clear. All right, well, we've come out the other side. And also, the sun is out at this point. So it's an indication that quite a bit of time has passed, actually. I love that Zoro says, too bad we can't collect their bounty. And I was just like, yeah, I would not recommend that. Nami says, we got to get the fuck out of here. They're after us. And Luffy says, well, what are we going to... How? We don't even have a ship. And of course, this is when Kaya speaks up and says, yes, you do. And they go down to the docks. And this was when I was sort of waiting for Mary to turn up and be just fine. Because that was how it went in the anime, basically. It was like, it seemed like he was dead. And then he turns up to be like, oh, I built you a ship. But it's just said here that his memory will live on with them. And I do want to like cop to the fucking hilarious mistake in hindsight. I think it was like last episode that I was going, what is the sheep guy's name again, guys? What is his name? I can't remember his name. How did I forget it's Mary? The name of the ship is Going Mary because of him. Like, I just completely fucking brain farted on that one. That was really embarrassing. So, and I will say too, like the way that the mast, or what is it called, figurehead of this ship is carved I actually quite like this. It's not as cartoonish in terms of the way that it's painted and everything. The overall shape and everything is like essentially identical, but it doesn't have the like pupils in the eyes. It's all monochromatic and kind of roughly done in a way that I think is really, really beautiful and works quite well in comparison to the design in the show that you guys know I had a hard time warming up to a little bit. So this is the moment where they invite Usopp to come with them. And he clearly is feeling awkward because he really wants to go, but he feels some real responsibility toward Kaya and feels guilty about leaving her. I love that Luffy specifically mentions his father and it's like, I need a sharpshooter like Usopp. I saw what you were able to do with your slingshot. This is exactly the kind of guy that I need on my crew. And yeah, he says, like, I couldn't leave Syrup Village. What about Kaya? She needs me. And Kaya is like, hey, bud, I know you mean well and everything, but I have had somebody like looking over me and telling me what to do and stuff forever. And I think it's time for me to look after myself. And I think I'll hand the shipyard over to somebody else and maybe try and become a doctor or something like that. And they have a kiss here, which I can't recall if they did in the anime or not. But, you know, the two of them had been sort of protesting about being romantically interested in one another. And I love when she says, like, oh, the adventures of Captain Usopp, and Luffy off to the side is just like, they do know I'm the captain, right? Which they have that argument later. And I had forgotten that this was a whole thing, that Usopp was like assuming he was going to be captain and that had to be squashed. Let's see. Sorry, Seraphim says, the memes are already declaring a certain bird boy is going to be a roast turkey come season 2 since they killed Mary. I really kind of hope so, Seraphim. Like, I know it's a fucked up thing to be like, I hope he dies, but like, you know? Florian says, I like that Usopp and Kaya got a kiss in the live action. Oh, okay, so it wasn't in the anime. Usopp is the only Straw Hat with a love interest where both sides are into it, and I do not care about romance, but I liked this. I never thought about the fact that they, like, both sides aren't into it with everybody else pretty much, but yeah, I guess that's true. Seraphim says, hey now, I'm sure Luffy's feelings for meat are reciprocated. I'm over time, so I have to kind of speed through the rest of this, but mostly what we get is the argument about who's captain, Usopp drawing an amazing flag, but of course that gets knocked down by Luffy. And then when we go to the Marines ship, we have poor Kobi being like, well, I failed my first mission and completely failed to get him. And I thought what we were going to have was, because we hear Garp say you flushed them out, and I thought we were going to zero in on the little lifeboat because Kuro is seen rowing away from the island, just like manually rowing alone. I thought Garp was going to be like, well, there's Kuro in a fucking rowboat alone. We got him. But no. He is looking at the Going Merry and saying, you flushed them out. And every time, of course, that poor Kobi succeeds in one thing, he fails in another. So he's flushed them out, but he also doesn't want his friend Luffy to get caught. So he has extremely mixed feelings about this. And the Straw Hat crew are sitting like chatting about how everything's going to be smooth sailing from here on, when all of a sudden there's like these horrible sounds and they realize they're being fired at. So they go out on the deck and see that the Marines have zeroed in already. And Luffy sees Garp and says, Grandpa? So that shit is let out of the bag quite early in this, in comparison to like episode 400 of the anime. I'm not mad at it, but it is funny. And that's how it ends. So I can't wait to watch the next one, guys. I'm really, really excited. So thank you all so much for hanging out with me. Appreciate you all a lot. Thank you, Gabby, for commissioning this. Hope you all are enjoying the coverage. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.